the deadliest tsunami in modern history in 2004. A massive earthquake struck the Indian Ocean on December 26, 2004. An earthquake occurred near the island of Sumatra, which caused the deadliest tsunami in modern history. Waves up to 30 meters high covered the coasts of Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, India, and other countries washed by the waters of the Indian Ocean. About 230,000 people became victims of the disaster. How did the region survive the disaster? At 7 hours 58 minutes 53 seconds local time, an earthquake of unprecedented magnitude started about 160 kilometers west of Sumatra, at a depth of about 30 kilometers. The Indian tectonic plate shifted under the Burmese plate, resulting in the formation of a fault more than 1,600 kilometers long. Oriented from north to south, the magnitude of the tremors reached 9.3. The tremors were felt even in the USA. The earthquake, which lasted more than 8 minutes, moved a colossal volume of water. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands were closest to the epicenter. The tsunami took only a few minutes to devastate the archipelago. Already in 20 minutes, waves up to 30 meters high struck the province of Aceh, in the northern tip of Sumatra. In an hour and a half, the tsunami reached Sri Lanka and the east coast of India. Thailand was hit by the tsunami about 2 hours later. The waves reached the coast of Africa, including its southernmost part. 16 hours later, before the tsunami, the water had moved away from the shore. Up to 1 kilometer, local residents and tourists, who were aware of the signs of impending danger, had time to evacuate when they saw it. Nevertheless, most of the victims were caught unawares by the elements. According to eyewitnesses in Sumatra, which was the hardest hit, 3 black waves crashed onto the shore at an interval of a few minutes. In many places, the floods inundated areas up to 4 kilometers inland, wiping out hundreds of fishing villages and major cities. The tsunami washed ashore cargo ships, yachts and barges, and washed away trees, cars and houses. The Indian Ocean earthquake was the 3rd strongest since records began in 1900, and the resulting tsunami was the deadliest natural disaster in modern history. For example, on December 26, 2004, about a quarter of all Aboriginal people living in the Nicobar Islands died on the southwestern coast of Sri Lanka near the village of Paralia. Water overturned an overcrowded passenger train, killing more than 1,700 people. This disaster is considered to be the largest railroad disaster in history. In Indonesia alone, the death toll exceeded 172,000. In Sri Lanka, more than 35,000 people died. In India, 16,000. In Thailand, 8,000. Among the dead were more than 9,000 foreign tourists, mostly Europeans, who were enjoying the peak of the vacation season. The total number of victims amounted to about 230,000, despite the considerable distance. Dozens of locals died, even in African countries, such as Somalia. The farthest death was recorded near Cape Town. Interestingly, the energy released during the 2004 earthquake was twice the power of all the projectiles used in World War II, including 2 atomic bombs. In addition, this energy would have been enough to power the entire planet for 2 whole years. However, there have also been much larger changes. For example, the entire island of Sumatra, with an area of 473,000 square kilometers and a population of almost 60 million people, shifted by as much as 36 meters. The earthquake also caused a shift in the Earth's axis of rotation by 3 centimeters. Here's what they said. At 10 o'clock in the morning, neighbors shouted that we should run to the mountains, that there was a big wave. The whole family of 5 people ran to the nearest Rumasala mountain. Taking their dog with them, they spent 24 hours on the mountain before they could reach the temple of Jatagala. The family, along with many other families, spent 2 weeks in the temple, as there was no way to return to the house. It was flooded up to the roof. They were saved by the fact that they lived 700 to 800 meters from the ocean shore, not on the coast itself. Those who lived on the coast were all swept out to sea. They also said that the nearby town of Gao was more severely affected than Unawatuna. There the old fort was completely flooded and partially destroyed. There was a bus station next to the fort. Morning, Sunday, Buddhist full moon festival. Can you imagine? How many people were in town and at the bus station? So, the ocean carried away several buses along with the people. I think Unawatuna was saved by the coastal reef, which now allows tourists to swim in the bay without waves. The reef dulled the wave a bit, and it did not cause as much damage as in other places along the coast. That's why our hosts had time to evacuate to the nearest mountain. This is such a sad and tragic story. Their house is still standing, and our host's mother, her middle son with his wife and 2 children, and her younger, unmarried son continue to live in it. The older son built a house opposite his mother's house, where he lives with his wife and 2 children, on the first floor and rents out the second floor. Mother every day looked at this old, blackened by time and water, the house, and remembered the tsunami that took so many lives. My friend was in Thailand at the time, I think in Phuket, and saw from the hotel balcony how the bottom of the sea was exposed and people began to collect seashells. They shouted from the hotel to leave. But even if they had shouted, apparently it would not have helped, very quickly covered with a wave. It flooded several floors of the hotel, but the building withstood, which saved almost everyone. Someone on the lower floors got fractures, someone was less lucky. Then they were told that the building had been built according to a design that corresponded to some level of earthquake resistance. So it must have had an effect. Should you be afraid of tsunamis? There can only be one answer to this question. You should be afraid of tsunamis, but you should not turn it into paranoia and cancel your beach vacation. And you should definitely save yourself in case of warning. The water only seems soft and harmless, but the volume of a 1 by 1 by 1 meter cube of seawater weighs about a ton, about the weight of a passenger car. A tsunami brings hundreds of millions of tons of water at speeds of more than 100 kilometers per hour. Such a wave can kill on first contact. There is almost no chance of survival if you stay on the shore. That is why you should run as far away from the shore as possible. As soon as you hear a warning or see a sharp tide, it is desirable to choose an elevated position. This is the only way to save your life. The magnitude of tsunami impacts depends on the strength of the wave, the nature of the coastline, and the speed of prevention and mitigation measures. Effective early warning systems and timely community action can significantly reduce casualties and damage. The devastation from a tsunami can be severe, so preparing for it and taking measures to reduce the risk are important tasks. World Tsunami Awareness Day, November 5. Fighting inequality for a disaster-resilient future. Tsunamis pose a significant threat to all of us, but they are especially dangerous for vulnerable groups such as women, children, people with disabilities, and the elderly. The main objective of this year's World Tsunami Awareness Day is to sensitize the public to reduce the risks associated with these devastating events and to increase public preparedness. Tsunamis can have catastrophic consequences. Over the last century, 58 tsunamis have occurred and killed more than 260,000 people. On average, each disaster has caused 4,600 deaths, more than any other natural disaster. On 2022, this year's theme for World Tsunami Awareness Day is Fighting Inequality for a Disaster-Resilient Future, reflecting the theme of the International Day for Disaster Reduction. The day serves as a reminder of the need for universal engagement and cooperation for disaster risk reduction. The day's activities aim to explore the relationship between tsunamis and inequality. In particular, it addresses how tsunamis can pose a greater risk to certain groups because of inequality, and how the effects of tsunamis can make vulnerable populations poorer, thereby further exacerbating inequality.